Hello and welcome back to some Zwift racing. We join the virtual world once again with Super League Triathlon's eSports cycling series, and it is race 2 for the men. This time we head to the Harrogate Circuit in Yorkshire. It is what was the end of the 2019 UCI Worlds course. It's a really tough one. There's some really punchy little climbs, 28 kilometres, and it's going to sort out the men from the boys. And speaking of sorting out the men from the boys, one of the men joins me, and I say that because he's my employer, Chris McCormack. Once again, getting up nice and early with about 15 minutes before this race. Macca, how are you, mate?
At this time of morning, I'm feeling like a boy more than a man. So it's good to be back. I thought last race was magnificent, and it's good to be calling another one.
It really was a magnificent race, wasn't it? There was some really interesting points during that race. There was some good team tactics. I loved having the intermediates, and we're going to have 4 more during the race this time around. And then to have David Manwaring, who, to be fair, I didn't know enough about him considering his fantastic results in the end. But he's a very, very strong biker, and he showed up a field of excellent triathletes.
Oh, he was magnificent, David, and to give him credit, he's probably a better runner than he is bike rider. I know him a lot from living here in Sydney. I know he's now living on the Gold Coast. He's trained a lot with Aaron Riel, so those two and the Australian team in particular were magnificent. But I would never have picked David to win a bunch sprint, so he surprised us all. I did watch the interview you did with him after the race. He's got that big beard, which doesn't slow him up on the eSports racing. But I thought he was magnificent, and I think he'll be a great asset for the team throughout this entire series.
Yeah, Zwift racing, as we're coming to realise more and more with each of these races, is very different to real-world racing. Not to take anything away from David's performance, but he knows how to race on Zwift. He knows that you can use spurts in power to stay with the group when you're drafting, and he knows how hard you've got to go off the start, and also how to time a finish, because he just came from the clouds there. Well, not from the clouds, but he certainly timed that finish perfectly to win by 0.1 of a second.
Yeah, I think when we watched that whole race, I think the big surprise, the big takeaway of that race was the Norwegians were never in it from the beginning, and we did expect them to do very, very strong, but they were dropped on that first climb. But the Australians were all over it from the onset. I think, Aaron Riel really set the tempo up front. They had Marten van Riel there, and David just sort of sat within that top 3 or 4, which is exactly the way you race these Zwift races. We've seen that time and time again now. We're becoming a bit of experts in calling these events, but he just nailed that to perfection. And we came straight over the top of Leo Bergere, who had his girlfriend Angie Olmo fanning him off during his race to keep him cool, but he had nothing to answer for David's sprint.
That's exactly right. Now, being a Super League triathlon event, there's plenty of cash on offer. There's cash when you come across the line, $500, $250 and $100. There's cash for those who pick up the most points, the team that picks up the most points in the intermediate sprint, and also for the general classification. And the way we do that across the course of 3 races is to take the 2 quickest athletes from your team and add their time up, and then that is where the GC sits. So after this one, and I can confirm it is tight, Macca, Team Australia took a combined time of their first 2 athletes of 1 hour 12:52. Team Great Britain, 1 hour 12:53. Team Canada, 1 hour 12:53, and then Team Germany, 1 hour 13:01. So there is 1.14 seconds covering Australia, GB, and Canada, and that's when you know you've got good racing.
Well, it just shows how close these guys are coming across the line. Sure, on the screen it looks it looks like some distance. It looked like David jumped away, but it was very, very close. There was no great British athletes in that top 5, yet they finished second overall on GC. So I think it's going to be very, very different here in Yorkshire. This is the hometown of the Brownlees. This is where Ali's going to know these climbs very, very well. But the big takeaway for all these athletes for all the teams that are racing, is seconds matter and position matters, and you need to be as close to the front at all times, especially on that finish line, as you possibly can, because we're accumulating those fastest 2 times, and anything can happen.
Yes, anything can happen. We've seen that many times. So let's have a little look at this course in more general terms. As I said, 4 intermediates. There's the Yorkshire King of the Mountain. That'll come at about 8.9 kilometres in the first time around. And then the Harrogate Sprint. And then again on the second lap at 22.9 kilometres, the Yorkshire King of the Mountain. And then at 25.1, the Harrogate Sprint. Now, this is a pretty punchy little climb. You climb about 60 metres over the course of 1.2 kilometres with the top ascent probably at the gradient about 5 So you've got to, it's a little bit like the course we just had, where you've really got to hit it hard at the start of that climb and get the watts up if you're going to stay with that group, because as we know, if you see a little gap opening up, it's almost impossible to cross back over.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway from a few of these races we've seen, as you come into these climbs, they really need to set up the power well before the climb. In a real world race, you'd be logging out that power as the climb started and punching over it. But we're seeing the damage being done in that 300 or 400 meters before the climb as the athletes rev up that power and they punch over the top. And that's where these gaps are opening. So the teams that are looking to stay in this and not get isolated like the Norwegians did need to be aware that the power is going to come on before the climbs start. And a lot of that happens on the climbs and in the sprints as well. So a sprint will last a lot longer than you're anticipating in a real world race.
Let's pull out a few names if we can. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes now until the start of this race, and there'll be plenty of athletes who will be just feeling very nervous about how this one's going to play out after the pain that they've been put through. But this is there's less of an elevation in this one. There's some really rolling hills. There's a few punchy little bits. There's long flat sections as well. There's a little bit for everybody, and I want to pull out a few names of you think who could go well. And let's start with Team Australia. I really liked what Aaron Royal brought to the table and Marten van Riel. They're a really strong team overall, because when you look at Royal, Van Riel, they were up the front the whole time, and David Manwaring obviously won. And Max Stapley was a guy who's obviously French, but he's in the Australian team, who was a great addition in terms of pushing the pace and being up in the top 10.
Yeah, I thought the Australian team, when you look back at the race, and I had the opportunity to do that post the event, they just timed everything to perfection. They were always close together. And young Max, who is representing France, but he's actually an Aussie, is training down there with Aaron Royal. So they would have talked about this in the lead up to the event, and they take it very seriously. As we said, when you start to put money on, professional athletes start to ramp things up. In the races before, it was just a bit of pride, but now we're talking to some serious dollars in a season that hasn't had any racing and prize money. So I think with Aaron Royal leading this and Marten van Riel being the adopted Aussie leading that young team, I think they're going to do very, very well on this course, because Aaron knows Yorkshire very well. He knows these punchy climbs and what's required to put out the power and be competitive over a course that's going to require a lot of revving.
Do we see a better showing from Team GB? We obviously when I say that, they're in second position in the GC overall, but they didn't figure that much in the pointy end of the racing in this one. Alistair Brownlee, I think, finished in the top half of the top 10. But Alex Yee, Mark Buckingham, Gordon Benson, and Johnny, if he does indeed race, can they have a better run, because they've got, I guess, virtual home ground advantage?
Well, you'd hope so, right? If anyone's going to know these climbs and what they're going to feel like, whether they're virtual or in real life, it's the Brownlee boys and this team, Great Britain. It is a Yorkshire-based team, and to give them credit, I think Great Britain was probably the most, and Nathan Killam on that Tron bike, but Great Britain as a team was probably on the front of this last race more than any other team. So it was a matter of timing that got their points wrong. That's why they're sitting in second position. I think if they can get the timing right and be at the front when the points are allocated, which is just common sense, I know, but if they can do that right here on this Yorkshire course, I think they are the team to beat outside the Australians.
All right, we're counting down to the start of this race, and you reminded me, Mac, to talk about the Tron bike, and you'll see different kinds of bikes, and anyone who's familiar with Zwift racing will see that everyone's riding a slightly different bike. In this race series, all bike advantages have been nullified. Everyone's riding the same equipment. They might look different, but they're all the same in terms of the wattage that they can put out and the aero advantages, and the same for power-ups. We don't have any power-ups. So everyone's on a completely flat playing field. There's no way you can have an advantage, even if you do, like Nathan Killam, look very fetching with your Tron bike and your matching green jersey. Team Canada was carried by Nathan. It's great to have him back. He's a real character and to race in Super League, even virtually. And that team needs to support him a bit more. Matty Sharp, Aidan Longcroft Harris, Brent McMahon and Jeremy Brown.
Oh, without question. I love that Tron bike because it made Nathan very, very easy to pick. And what was great, and I actually texted Nathan after the race, was to see him at the pointy end of a Super League race, because in a lot of the Super League racing we had in real life over the last couple of seasons, he was always trying to fight for survival and fight for elimination. So to see him in that top 5, spectacular. I I'd love to see the Canadian team do well. Brent McMahon is a very, very strong Ironman athlete. He did our first ever Super League race in Hamilton Island. He has a lot of experience. And between him and Nathan, they can drag this younger group up there. And Nathan has the power to coordinate this group. I'm just hoping that in the lead up to this event, there's a more communication between the teams going in. I think the Australians got that down perfectly. The French were, a bit all over the place. I was expecting a lot more from the French, but I think with Nathan Killam and Brent McMahon getting in the ear of the younger Canadians, they could do some damage on this Yorkshire course. It suits them to a T.
All right, let's quickly run through the other teams. Team Germany has Simon Henselet, Justus Nieschlag, Freddie Funk, love that name, Maximilian Spurl, and Thor Bendix Madsen, who's a Dane who did fantastically and was up there at the pointy end. Team France, we have some big names in that one. Leo Bergere obviously finished second. Dorian Coningston raced in the last one. Pierre Lecours there, Henry Schumann, and Vincent Lewis, who also didn't race in the first one, and I think he's going to be out there tonight. Team Brazil, who's currently in sixth position, did quite well. Ronaldo Colucci, the standout there from them, and Team USA struggled a little bit, but they didn't struggle as much as Team Norway. Christian Blumenfeld, Casper Storns, Cedric Christopherson, Andre Espedal, and Sebastian Vernessen did certainly struggle. Blumenfeld, we spoke to him just a few days ago after the race, and he said he is going to go absolutely hammer and tongs at the start of this one to try and make sure he doesn't get dropped, because it's a little embarrassing for him. He just said it was embarrassing. He just got left behind on that first climb.
He was never in it, which was a big shock, because that would bite Christian really, really hard. And the fact that he's come away and said, expect a big performance out of me here in Yorkshire, he's probably going to start warming up yesterday for today's race. So he's I expect Norway to do big things with Christian Blumenfeld all over the front of this race, and he's going to really, really like the fact that the opening sprint is a climb up that first climb, that first king of the mountain. He'll rev that right before that climb starts, a good 400 or 500 metres before the climb, and bounce over the top. And if you're not close to Christian over that climb, you could be in the same position he was last week.
Yeah, he put up the clip on his YouTube, and you just slowly see everyone right away from him, and he is absolutely gassed at home on the trainer. So he'll be sitting there in Bergen in Norway, where he's got 18 and a half hours of daylight a day, all of them on the Zwift bike indoors. Now, before we go, very quick chat on who do you think is the pick of the teams. I won't ask you to pick an individual, but a pick of the teams. Who's gonna take this one out for the national pride?
Look, I haven't been this as excited with Australia all over the pointy end of a triathlon event. Even though it's an eSports cycling race, I'm going to call it a Super League Triathlon. It's been a long time coming to see Australian dominance. I'm going to stick with the Aussies. I hope they kill everybody and take the prize money all the way through this series. So Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Yeah, obviously, metaphorically kill them in 2020, mate. But, well, for me, I'd love to see Team Australia do well, but I'd like to see the Brits take it to them as well at home, led by Alistair Brownlee, who, as usual, pushes the pace at the front and then burns a few matches and disappears off the back end because of the sprints. But the other team I think will do better is Team France. I was a bit disappointed by what they put out. They've got some big names in that one. Anyway, we've run out of time. It's time to head over now, Macca. I'm really looking forward to calling this one. I haven't been this excited about calling a race since the last Super League race we did, which feels so long ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's been that long. What a year. And this is what we've got, but I'm with you. I think this will be a great race and bring on the real stuff. It's not that far away, I hope. Fingers crossed. But on with eSports. Let's go.
Let's go indeed. Zwift doing everything they can to get this playing field nice and level to watch some fantastic racing, and we are looking forward to everything about this race. It is on the UCI Worlds 2019 course, a very famous patch of 13 kilometres, 14 kilometres. We're doing a couple of laps around that one. It's a beautiful, beautiful course. If you haven't got into Zwift, make sure you get on it. You can ride it yourself as well. It's going to be awesome. Don't forget, we're going to be on IG Live after this one, talking to all of the winners and probably a couple of the losers as well, rubbing it in. But never has a group of athletes been that excited to get out and race once again. It's been a long time in lockdown, and now it's time to go racing. Just under 20 seconds now until we get this thing underway. Chris McCormack joins me for this, and it's going to be a fantastic one. And we're going to follow Christian Blumenfeld for the start of this one too, because as we said in the pre-show, he has been
ready to absolutely go bananas at the beginning, doesn't want to get himself dropped. 10 seconds until we head off, and we're about to see 28 kilometres of brutal Zwift racing. Cannot wait for it. Let's get this underway right now. 3, 2, 1, and off we go. The barrier's gone. Blumenfeld takes off alongside a field of fantastic triathletes from all over the world. So many pain caves already heating up out there as we get started on the little patch of road there before we head up onto Ripon Road and the first of the slight inclines under the banner, and we get this thing done. And Macca, this should be a really, really interesting one.
Yeah, it will be very, very interesting. But noticing Christian, though promising he was going to go out very, very hard, was bunched very, very early straight off the blocks. He's a lot closer to the front, but you can see the amount of power Dorian Connex and Max Stapley put out to get onto the front of this race, because I can only imagine that Christian was roaring out of those blocks to make sure what happened last week didn't happen. And as we followed that women's race the other day over this course, we saw this early part of the racing was bunched like this, and it was Lucy Charles who, prior to this first climb that sits at about 8 kilometres, did all the damage. It took that group away. So I know the men would be very, very aware of that, of what happened, and staying together now in this early sections is going to be on everyone's mind.
There is Ali in his pain cave, which is a shed down the back of his house in Yorkshire, which is where we are right now. And there he is sitting in the pack. He's just having a chat to whoever was next to him there, but still also pushing 400 watts. So better him than me, absolutely. At the moment, Maximilian Spelt or Madsen, Jeremy Briand, Anthony Pujard all at the front, Christian Blumenfeld there as well, as we knew he would be. Cal Willie from Team Brazil is also there alongside Stapley, who's on the front throughout in the previous race. He's a late inclusion to this one too. He wasn't going to be racing until yesterday, so this is going to be a really interesting one. Now this section here is called Harlow Hill, so up Otley Road in Harrogate. It's about a 4% average, which doesn't seem like a lot, but over 1.4 kilometres, if you haven't warmed up well enough, that can really start to hurt you in this long, dragging climb. And you can realise that maybe you haven't done enough. And there is the great man, Nathan Killam, who's been warming up for about the last 3 hours in his kitchen. But it's a testing start, this one.
It is, and the big good news is we're seeing a lot more of the green jerseys this week. They were never in tackle last week, so Norway learnt their lesson of getting out of the blocks early. And like you said, I'm not on the Tron bike this week, which is a shame. He was an easy pick when you saw that glowing Tron bike. He's reverted back to, or taken the Tron bike out of the picture. So maybe he's hiding a little better from everyone. He's got a target on his back. People are aware of where he is, so he's hiding without that Tron bike, which might make him a little stronger or a little harder to pick.
Right at the bottom of your screen, someone who isn't hiding is the beret and long hair of Marten van Riel, who again joins Team Australia and has been part of a team that really swept it last time around. Australia was just more organised. They were on Discord talking to each other, and because of that, they took out the intermediates. And just to recap on where the intermediates are, at 8.9 kilometres is the end of the first King of the Mountain. 5 points on offer there, and then at 11.1 the Harrogate Sprint. Now that comes up really, really quickly, and if you're not prepared for that, it can really sneak up on you, and those points can go begging. In the women's, Lucy Charles Barclay was far better prepared for that one than everybody else, and in fact she took out every single possible point she could, including at the end. She was absolutely fantastic, and she's a very, very strong athlete.
Well, yeah, you're finishing second 3 times at the Ironman World Championships, no slouch, and she does a lot of work on Zwift, so very, very familiar of how this racing goes. I was really, really impressed with just a knowledge of, it seemed like a knowledge of this course, knowing where the climbs were prior to them coming up on screen and putting out that power when it matters. And she took that group of women away straight over that first climb, and as I said earlier, I think the men would have seen that. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to break away, but with Christian Blumenfeld all over the front of this and ramped up for a big event, he's the type of guy that can do that same sort of damage prior to this first climb and as they punch over that first King of the Mountain.
Right, they're down the descent and back up to a reasonable climb again. And speaking of Christian Blumenfeld, we spoke to him a couple of days ago. You can see the full interview on our Instagram TV, but here's a clip talking about what happened to him last time out, and it was a little bit embarrassing for him, actually.
The day before, I did another Zwift race, and I was kind of giving my teammate a hard time, and I was kind of joking about maybe I need to swap out Casper for the race because he was doing so bad the evening before, and then I was ending up being beaten by everyone in my team. So, you know, maybe next week I need to be coach instead of the athlete in the team and swap out myself.
He's laughing there and joking about it, but I tell you what, that would have stung him really, really bad. He's such a competitive guy, and usually on a Super League race, Macca, you see him and you can hear him with those breaks, just training through the field because he's not the best swimmer in the pack, but by the end of the bike, usually he's up there or thereabouts and just taking other athletes with him. So it's funny how Zwift racing translates to real life racing in different ways, and the specific way you have to ride a bike in Zwift.
Without question, and the amazing thing about the Norwegians is whilst they're competitive with everybody else in the race, I think they're more competitive amongst themselves. They're a great training group. They spend pretty much 365 days together in training camp and working really hard, and that friendly grittiness between the compatriots of the Norwegian team keeps them all honest. So I can only imagine the slagging that went behind the scenes between that team after the race, after Christian was promising to deliver so much. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of Christian, as he said there, and as we anticipate with the type of racer he is. I think this week he's going to be all over this race. He's not going to let that same thing happen.
All right, we have lost no one. All 20 of our top 20 covered by half a second. Everyone's sticking there in the pack. Of course, there's a big advantage drafting-wise. For probably about 30% if you can stick behind someone. But these guys travelling in, well, roughly, I'm going to look right now, downhill at the moment, 68, 69 kilometres an hour, which is faster than my car can go, and now topping 70 kilometres an hour on this downhill, which is 8%. Not a lot of people getting into the super tuck position right now, which is interesting because you can basically stay with the pack by stopping pedalling completely if you're travelling fast enough. There we go. As Manuel Macias heads into the super tuck and everyone follows him in that one. It's that little bit of respite, and this is pretty much the only spot on the course that you can get that.
Yeah, without question, and it's good to see with the Super League colour jerseys. If you look at those red jerseys of Australia, they tend to be very well bunched together. That's just some good riding. They learnt that from last week's racing, is to try and stay with your teammates or as close to your teammates as possible to use their draft as you sort of plan those breaks. So you're looking at the blue team there, all the blue riders of Team Canada, led by Nathan Killam, tend to bunch together, and it's the French that seem to be moving up a lot as a team from front to back in those pink jerseys. So it's very interesting. Last week, a lot of those riders were individuals, and the Australians were the ones that tended to bunch well together. This week, we're seeing a lot more of that bunching of jerseys, which is, whether that's a team dynamic or just happening through fluke, we'll see. But the Australians did it very effectively by using each other last week.
Yeah, they were certainly the most organised, and when it comes to intermediates, you really have to be in terms of knowing who in your team is going to go for those King of the Mountain sections, who in your team is going to go for the sprints, and who's going to save themselves for the overall, because there's points and money on offer for all of them. And a thumbs up there from Alistair Brownlee, who's seeing himself on the screen, and you know that a man is comfortable pushing over 300 watts when he can just give a thumbs up, have a little bit of a grin, and just keep going on, and that's good to see, and great to have the Olympic champion Macca as part of our Zwift racing crew.
Yeah, without question, he's putting out 388 watts at 140 heart rate, so very, very comfortable and very, very fit, obviously. But I think, knowing Ali as we do, this, whether we're on a Zwift race or in real life, this is Yorkshire, this is home, this is where he likes to perform and do great things. The WTS World Series supposed to be on this course a couple of weeks ago, a race that he has won in the past and was going to be doing as preparation for the Olympic Games. Now he gets to do it on the UCI Zwift course, on the old Worlds course. I think he would like to be on that podium, knowing Alistair Brownlee at his hometown race with that man on screen, Alex Yee, who does this racing very well. He does all racing very well, but this Zwift racing in particular, with the thumbs up, he does exceptionally well.
He does. Looks like a beautiful day wherever he is as the sun's setting. Olivia Matthias saw herself on screen and couldn't get away from it quick enough. But Alex B continues, and there you can see him on the bottom left at 167 heart rate. Some really high heart rates getting around there. Simon Hensel, it's topping 180 at the moment, as is Freddie Funk and Michael Arashida from Team USA as they head down another one of the short, sharp descents, and we're getting very close now to the beginning of the King of the Mountain. So over the next 1.2 kilometres, it's going to get very, very steep. And we saw Lucy Charles-Barclay attack at this exact point on the course in the women's race 2 days ago, and no one could respond to that. And we're seeing some orange numbers on the right of the screen. James Cunnama, who's come in for Team France. Of course, he's South African, 37-year-old, multiple Ironman and 70.3 winner. He won Challenge Roth as well, alongside Bed Delaporte, who's also on Team France as a South African. But at the front of the race is Max Stapley with that little kangaroo icon. Alistair Brownlee's moved up to the front. Michael Arashida's on the front too, and there's some big numbers being pushed out. Stapley at 8.1. Tor Madsen, the Dane who's on Team Germany, at 8.2. Marten van Riel's gone off the back, pushing 8.3. And now Arashida on a 9.1. So they know that there's points on offer here. 5 points for the first across the line, which will be at 8.9 kilometres, so 600 metres to go. And it really is anyone's here, Macca.
Oh, without question. And you're seeing those heart rates climb. Whilst the power numbers are very, very important, it's the heart rates that are going to do the damage later. You're punching out big power to stay with the group and get over the top of this to try and win the King of the Mountains. But you're going to pay for that. And I'm watching the heart rate in particular of Alex Yee. You saw that about 200 or 300 metres prior to that climb starting. He got out of the saddle. He started to ramp up the power. The heart rate went up above 180 beats per minute. There's Alex again on screen, looking comfortable but out of the saddle, which means there's some commitment to getting over the top of this climb. It doesn't seem to look like it on screen because we're looking at icons, but you can see the commitment to stay with the group there in real life with Alex out of the seat.
James Cunnama now has broken away from the pack, and crossing over towards him is Mark Buckingham, who's got the highest 15-second power of anyone in this field, and it's showing, and it looks like for Team GB is going to take the 5 points, and Team France is going to pick up 4 points from Team Australia. I think Marten van Riel, Alistair Brownlee was in there as well, and and Aaron Royal. But Mark Buckingham, who's a training partner of Brownlee's in Leeds, 4-time British national champ, very, very experienced athlete. He picks up 5 King of the Mountain points. Van Riel picks up 4 for Team Australia. Alistair Brownlee picks up another 3 for Team GB. Team France pick up 2 through James Cunnama. And another Aussie, Max Stapley, picks up 1. So it looks like 8 points for Team GB, and 5 for Team Australia, 2 for Team France. And very soon we're going to see the sprint picked up as well, which is at 10.1 kilometres. So very good for Mark Buckingham.
Bucko, that was absolute local knowledge. You saw James Cunnama on the front there. It was like he had a lead-out man, and Bucko knew exactly when to strike. Alistair Brownlee right off the back of Bucko's wheels to grab that 3rd points. And they got away a bit there, so there was 5 or 6 of them that got over the top of that climb, had a 2-second gap, and were able to relax a little bit. Their power dropped, get a bit of a break post that sprint as the group comes back together. But very, very well executed local knowledge from the English team.
Well, there you go. As Mackie continues to suck on a Strepsil or whatever it is you're doing, I can hear it in my ears. You've got a bit of the sickness, and so do I, as we continue in this race. And a little bit of there you go, a little bit of green tea. It's very early in the morning here in Australia. As Brownlee now at the front, Max Stapley joins him. It's not too long until the sprint is going to finish at 11.1 kilometres, and it's going to come up very, very quickly for those who have burned a little bit too much in terms of energy to try and stay at the front of this one and pick up those King of the Mountain points. But off the front of the moment is Alistair Brownlee, 0.3 of a second ahead of his teammate Gordon Benson. There is Aaron Royal, very, very early in the morning in Australia. Didn't bother him last time. All he needed was some coffee and Red Bull, and he was off and going. But there's some pain on that face.
And it's England and Australia again. Yeah, look at that. 3 jerseys in the yellow and 2 Australian jerseys in the red. The front, knowing that it's Aaron Royal, who we saw on screen, going to the front with Marten van Riel.
All right, Royal now, they're in the sprint. And here we go, Royal, Benson, Brownlee, Van Riel, Manwaring's there, and he was our winner last time out. And there's plenty of huge numbers being pushed. At the moment, it's Manwaring on the front, and he gets it this time for Team Australia. And Team Australia and Team GB absolutely dominating. Van Riel was in there as well. There is David Manwaring in his garage at home, hoping to not wake his two kids up. And I can certainly vouch for that. I'm yelling here in the kitchen. But the kids are upstairs, and they're the sprint points. David Manwaring picks up 5. Mark Buckingham picks up another 4 to add his total. Van Riel, Benson and Royal, and we're seeing the same names at the front. And Team GB and Team Australia are absolutely streeting away from everybody else.
Oh, it's like the Ashes. I love this. Yeah, Dave. The great thing about David Manwaring, we saw his sprint, but he never, if you contrast that to Alex Yee, who was out of the saddle and all over his bike, David just seems to punch out big power without really looking like he is. He was getting up over 10.2 watts per kilo in a seated position. He's a great sprinter. He's great over the climbs. He's a great addition to the Australian team, having won last event, and again picking up the points. So a really, really strong Australian team, which is great to see, and taking on this local power English team.
Yeah, Team Australia and Team GB ahead of everyone. We'll get an update in the points very soon. But some disorganisation, some late changes for Team France has hurt them. We saw Dorian Connings pull out. Dorian Connings is in, but with Vincent Lewis is unable to race, and Pierre Lecour as well, and Anthony Poujard, James Connemara and Ben Delaporte are in. So it's hard when you haven't raced together, and there's some late changes in terms of picking up those intermediate points. Team Germany we haven't seen really feature. Team Norway as well, although Christian Blumenfeld is right there now and catching up. He's not a great sprinter by his own account, and one of the heavier athletes. Team USA we haven't seen feature too much either. Team Canada and Team Brazil. And the Brazilians have been there and thereabouts around the front, but haven't been able to make it stick into points at the moment. As we're well past the halfway point of this race, and we're back in town in Harrogate, which means that we're getting close to the halfway point. Sorry, we'll head up Ripon Road again soon, and under the start-finish banner. And there is the team points, as you said. Nothing between them. 14 apiece for Australia and Great Britain. Basically nothing for anyone else.
It's great to see, what's great about the jerseys on screen, and you're seeing the teams that are effectively bunching, as we said earlier. And the one thing I'm noticing is the Norwegians, is the way they're positioning themselves in this field. The Norwegians are sitting in green. You watch them tend to move up towards the front where they are, and then they just tend to drift back. They're not as well organised as the Australians and the English, and that's what's seeing the Australians and the Great Britain team score those points, because they're getting more of those riders over the line or closer to that point scoring position when it matters. And that's the difference between the teams that are scoring and doing well and those that are not. And Australia and Great Britain are all over in the point scoring field at the moment.
Okay, 300 metres or a bit under until we head under the start-finish banner and begin our second lap. We'll take a clip right now with a little bit more information as to how you can get involved with Super League across 2020. Yes, the newsletter keeping you informed about everything Super League Triathlon, and there's plenty of announcements coming up over the next month or two, I can tell you that, with new things, new innovations, new races, things happening all over the place. There's Tor Bendik Madsen from Denmark, from Team Germany, with the long hair, the lovely little beard, looks nicely trimmed, and he is a couple of seconds off the front at the moment from Anthony Poujard. Jackson Laundry from Team Canada, David Manwaring's there as well, as they head out onto Otley Road and up Harlow Hill for the second time. Again, it's a long dragging stretch of about 4% average gradient, 1.4 kilometres before they make the sharp right turn at Beckwith Shore. And how good is Harrogate and English names? They turn at one point onto Penny Pot Lane. They go up Pine Woods and Beckwith Shore and Otley Road. It could not be more British.
It's very, very, very British, and the British are all over the race as well. But the one thing that has happened is the field is split, and Gordon Benson, one of the British athletes, has been dropped off the back. He's a casualty of that second sprint, as the 17 of the group got away, and he's been isolated. So They're down one Great Britain. Whether that'll affect their point scoring ability, we're going to see on this climb in about 5 or 6 kilometres time. But it's interesting that the split happened after one race, which is one lap, which is very, very different than the women's race where that split happened very, very early. So everyone is very, very motivated this weekend, and Christian Blumenfeld, as he's promised, sitting in 4th position, is keeping that group tightly knit. Everyone's watching everybody. In particular, Blumenfeld close those gaps. You're watching his power go up and down all race, which is very, very typical Blumenfeld.
Yeah, at the moment, a couple of the Team Norway athletes, Tor Bendik Madsen and Cedric Christoffersen, are off the front by 4 seconds. And then there's we're seeing Andre Espedal here, also from Team Norway, who are part of the chasing pack. But you can see, just an update from the back of the pack. I mean, so there's a lot of guys that have been shelled at this point, including guys like Ben Delaporte, Andre Espedal, we saw that, Arashida, Simon Henselet's fair back, Gordon Benson's a minute 17 back, Matthew Sharp, Brent McMahon from Team Canada are a minute 38 back, Casper Storns is 5 minutes 14 seconds back. So at least Christian will have bragging rights over Casper Storns, who's having a hard day at the office at the moment. So he gets a little bit of that back for the training paddock up there in Bergen over the next month or two. But at the moment, off the front, though, is Tor Bendix Madsen, who, as we said, is a Dane who's part of Team Norway.
And it's a committed attack because it's
and Jack de Laundry.
Yeah, it's a committed attack by Tor because he's grown that out from 3 or 4 seconds up to 6 seconds. It's solid power. He looks very, very controlled, and it's at the right time where, that second KOM is at 22 just around 22 kilometres. So he's not too far from that climb, and he's getting that margin of error, I guess, to get over that climb and score some points. But it's at 6 seconds, and as we've found out in the past, it's a big group here, and I'm sure they're going to close it at the critical time. But that closing those gaps comes with casualties, and a lot of people could get isolated and dropped off the back of this group as they try and close across to Madsen on this climb.
Yeah, I said Team Norway, but he's actually part of Team Germany, Tor Madsen, along with Simon Henselet, Freddie Funk and Maximilian Sperl, who's in 4th position. But Madsen and Cedric Christoffersen doing the job for Team Germany and Team Norway, and they're going to need to because they have not scored any points up to this point. Maximilian Sperl, Anthony Poujard, James Cunnemar, Jackson Laundry, Jeremy Briand, Marten van Riel, all part of the chasing pack as David Manwaring gets into the super tuck position, gives himself a little bit of a break and then gets up in the saddle to continue on, and he'll be looking to go back-to-back wins. Really surprised. Surprised everyone except for Aaron Royal did David Manwaring in the first race. He timed it perfectly, won by 0.1 of a second. Lived with Aaron Royal for 8 years, and Aaron said to us afterwards he knew exactly how strong David would be, but he showed up some bigger names, if you like, in that first race in the London Reverse.
Oh, without question, and he's got the experience now. I think Aaron, he's the experienced rider on the Australian team. He's represented Australia at the Olympic Games. I think a lot of those athletes, whilst they're very, very close friends, Aaron leading that Australian group really saw the Australian perform very, very well. What's happening right now with Madsen off the front, they've pulled that back to 2 seconds. Madsen was the one who almost stole that KOM at the last race. So very, very strong, big power, and is able to do those solo breaks and hold on if need be. As I say that, they've closed that gap. Laundry's closed that gap to the group off the front, and they've all come back together prior to this first climb.
This exact thing happened in the women's race where I can't remember who it was, attacked in this exact spot and then got swallowed up, and you just got to wonder as to the tactics there, whether that's a smart thing to do, to burn a few matches trying to push the pace, get 3 or 4 seconds, get swallowed up by the group, don't take any points, and maybe just blow yourself a little bit. And it's very, very hard to make a break in Zwift. It's hard to cross over, but when you're in a chasing pack of that many riders, you can share the load a bit. So I'm not sure whether that was a smart thing to do tactically from Madsen. We know that he's a very, very good Zwift racer, so he'd know better than me, but no real benefit, I guess, in that one. Hasn't dropped anyone from the pack and has been swallowed up.
Yeah, it was probably a little premature. I think if he timed it a little bit closer to this second KOM climb, he's such a powerful climber. Like I said, in our last race in London, in that reverse 8 course, he was the rider that nearly stole the entire race. They caught him with about 100 metres to go over that last climb. So we know he has good, consistent, even power. And as the English learned in that last race, and the French with the Australians, it's about pushing out that power at the right time in Zwift racing that's critical. So I think he was a little premature. The group's picked him up. And unfortunately for him now, he's going to pay for that effort at the time when he needs to put out big efforts. So it's going to be a difficult climb. He needs to stay close to the group as they get over this climb. And whether he's going to score points, we don't know.
Speaking of putting out big efforts on the hills, Christian Blumenfeld, who we talked to a couple of days ago, as I said, has not been dropped yet. So he'll be, with under 10 kilometres to go, extremely happy that he's in with a shot of this one as they head back into the Super Tuck and head down again. We're going to hit that second KOM very soon. But before we do, another word from Christian about his power to weight ratio and where he's sitting in this race at this point.
You get punished more on your weight, I guess, in Zwift versus real life. And as you might know, I'm not the lightest guy in the field. And also, I think the way you have to sprint up that hill, you know, like every small hill, you really need to go all out from the saddle. And I'm more a kind of guy who likes to drag it, you know. I want to have 20 minutes hard instead of those 3 minutes all out effort. And I think in the Zwift world, I'm really getting punished really hard there. And if you lose the gap, if you lose the pack, you are by yourself, and that's really tough. And that's also part of the game, you know.
I love him.
He never makes
the more I hear
Christian
Blumenfeld,
he does not like to lose.
Yeah, the more I hear him talk, the more I love him. He's just such a tough guy. As you see him center of screen in the green there, right in the bunch. He's just a great athlete to follow. He's got a quirky personality. He's such an aggressive racer, and he's just so hard on himself. And he's not going to get dropped, I guarantee you, in this race.
He is so hard on himself. I spoke to him when we spoke to him. I said, "Mate, what have you been doing?" Last time I asked you, "What do you do outside triathlon?" He didn't have an answer. He didn't have any interests outside of triathlon. What's happening? He's like, "I have developed an interest. I now swim, bike, and run, and I also make videos of myself swimming, biking, and running." And I'm like, "That's not really what I was after, but it'll do for now. Just try like knitting or I don't know, playing video games, something." Anyway, he loves it. He absolutely loves it. And another man who loves it is Nathan Killam. He's right there and thereabouts once again. Finished 5th overall in our race back in the London 8 reverse. Great to have a man with so much charisma back in Super League Triathlon. Just to update you on who's been dropped, we've got a pack of 18 there with all of our teams represented. Maximilian Spurl's 6 seconds back, so he's in danger of being the 18th and the man who's going to get dropped next. But plenty of athletes who have been dropped back. We've got a field of 32, and there's 7.5 minutes spreading them back to Casper Storns, who's having a difficult day. Jason West, Dorian Connings is nearly 5 minutes back as well, along with Gordon Benson, Matthew Sharp, Justin Metzler from Team USA, Brent McMahon, Simon Hensler, Danilo Pimentel, Michael Arashida, Miguel Hidalgo, Andre Espadal, Manuel Macias. So plenty of the Brazilians are out, and Ben Delaporte. So we've got a group of 18 that are going to fight this one out, including...
Here's the KOM.
With the COM coming up. It's not too far away right now. They start...
The Australians are moving up. You can see the Australians in the red jerseys moving to the front.
Yeah, as we've seen, you've got to position yourself really, really well at the start of this and put the big watts out at the start of the hill. Otherwise, you find life very, very hard. And so at 22.9, that will be when it is decided. And Alistair Brownlee, Christopherson, Spurl, they all go up into the orange numbers as they start this climb. Once again, as we approach the half-hour mark of this race, just 6 kilometres to go, 2 intermediates, and then, of course, the finish. And up in the saddle is Alex Yee, and he knows how important it is to stay with this group. Spurl's now off the front, though. Brownlee's positioned himself well. Christopherson, Killam as well. Up in the saddle is Brownlee. No time for a thumbs up now. He's pushing very, very hard. There in the back shed in Yorkshire, there is Manwaring as well in his garage up on the Gold Coast. All around the world, plenty of pain being put down. Brownlee, Killam, Christopherson, Poujard, Stapley, but it's Brownlee on the front at the moment. 800 metres still to go. And some very, very high heart rates and a lot of pain and a long way to go yet. 190 the heart rate for Stapley and Brian. I would be dead. I would have actually died.
Big heart rate numbers, and you're seeing in the pain caves, there's the seriousness is on the face of Brownlee, the seriousness is on the face of Manwaring. It's showtime right now, and Alistair and the Brits have always coming to the front at the right time. They know this course. We've talked about that earlier, but they're staying at the back until the critical points of the race, and the Australians and the Brits again at the front when it matters, led by Brownlee and Manwaring, and Marten van Riel sitting in fourth position. But it's those heart rates that are consistently high now, even in those tucks when they're trying to get the recovery, they're still sitting at 175 heart rate. So it's really, really starting to sting. And this is when you blow up now and you're off the back, you're not closing any gaps, no matter how big the group is with you.
Manwaring now at the front, and he's done it before. He's going to do it again. He's going to lead. Manwaring takes it from the pair of Buckingham and Brownlee. Cunningham comes in next from Van Riel. But it came up quickly, and it was David Manwaring who did the job again, and there he is, looking as cold as ice. The Iceman, Manwaring, takes the 5 points from Buckingham, Brownlee, Cunningham, and Van Riel. And again, with the exception of James Cunningham, who was a late inclusion in this one, the 37-year-old, it is Team GB and Team Australia that take the bulk of the points. Cunningham picking up another 2 for Team France. The other 5 teams yet to score a point. So Team Australia and Team GB are going to be fighting this one out to the end. There's no doubt about that. But they've just swept it. I'm really surprised that the other teams haven't been able to put it together. And there you go, 21 to
1
20,
point.
and we've got one intermediate and then the finish, which will be, I think, double points. And all of those 4 points for France have been won by James Cunningham. Brazil, Germany, Norway, USA, all those teams, Canada, yet to score a point. But
yeah, it's the Australia Great Britain show all over this week's race, because Cunningham, who's an Ironman athlete, a fourth place finisher in Kona, an amazingly talented Ironman racer, doing all the damage for France. If you removed him from the team, they're also sitting on 0 points. So very, very interesting to see how well organised the Australian and British teams are in relation to the other teams, because they're scoring it. They're together at the right times. They're putting themselves in the right position. And I just love David Manwaring's sprint. He's a seated sprinter. He's like a track sprinter in cycling. He doesn't look like he's putting on power. When we contrast him to his pain cave, and you compare that to Ali Brownlee, who's out of the saddle and pushing down big power, and looks like he's pushing down big power. You can see his face there, Alistair Brownlee on screen. That looks uncomfortable. When you see David Manwaring, he looks in a very, very controlled seated position, doesn't look under duress at all. So there he is there. Much different sprinting styles.
Yeah, Manwaring certainly not letting it show on his face. The sprint coming up, which will be decided at 25.1, so only 400 metres to go. Brownlee's at the front at the moment from Van Riel. There's plenty of yellow there. Buckingham moves into the front now as the yellow and the red dominate the pointy end of this race, and it's Alex Yee who pulls away this time. Alex Yee pushing at 10.1 watts a kilo, and it looks like he's going to take this sprint. He is. He's going to lead. He went early too. Well done to Alex Yee. I saw a pink jersey in there from Team France. But outside of that, Livy Matthias likes it. Now she's seen herself on screen again. She's popping away. She has a laugh. But someone who isn't laughing there is Alex Yee, who's really pushed himself hard. Aaron Royal takes 4. Cunningham takes all the team points for Team France again from Van Riel and Buckingham. The same names popping up again and again, Mac.
Yeah. And that was the sprint that won that was the sprint that's won the team's points. There's no team's points on the finish line from memory. So that sprint by Alex Yee was critical. Now they're racing for individual points. Now it's individual money that's on the line for this bunch sprint at the end. So Alex Yee has won the team's classification for Great Britain with that sprint. So very, very well executed, very well done. Whether that was pre-planned prior to the race, I don't know, but it looked so well executed. It's won them the team's classification.
1 point in the end, and that will sting Team Australia, who get pipped at the post by Alex Yee's 5 points. at the back end, but a contribution from everyone. And before we get to the end of this race, it's 1.8 Ks. We'll take another quick clip to update you on Super League social media.
Welcome aboard, everyone. Super League Direct.
Easy, look at that. She got the skills.
It's on.
That's a good combo.
Yeah.
So there you go, 1.6 kilometres to go. Alex G picks up 5 points, and Team GB take it by 1 point. No points on the finishing line. It's different to the women's race with double points on the finishing line last time around, but just those 4 intermediates. And now it all comes down to individual glory and who can take it. Brownlee off the front. There is Nathan Killam in the kitchen doing his best. As he always
Kill him in the
does.
kitchen. Kill him in the kitchen.
Ben Riel. Exactly. Ben Riel there with the beard, and Brownlee, having sprinted that one, collects himself as much as possible. 1.1 kilometres to go. There's a little kicker here, and then they turn, and it's an uphill 600 metres to the finishing line. 1 kilometre to go now in this one. Don't forget, we're going to be on Instagram TV, or Instagram Live, sorry, talking to our winners and losers at the end of this one. Tor Madsen now off the front from Jackson Laundry. Manwaring, who's going to have it left in them? Who's your tip really quickly, mate? Who do you think's going to take this one?
I'm going to go with Manwaring. His sprints have been solid all race. He's in the right position. We're at the right time to kick, and there's $500 on the line. I think he's going to be a tough one to beat.
Madsen off the front, he's all by himself, and now up in the saddle is David Manwaring. 500 metres to go, and they're going to catch Madsen. You think so? Yep, they're going to catch him. The group is, we can see some different coloured jerseys there at the front. We haven't got the timing at the moment, so I'm not sure who it is. There's Brownlee in second position. And he's up in the saddle as well, 350 metres to go. It's very hard to see who's at the front. Brownlee, we're following right now. And I think that's Stapley from Team Australia. I'm not 100% sure because we've lost our timing. It is Stapley from Jackson Laundry and Alistair Brownlee. Can Stapley hold it for Team Australia? 100 metres to go. Stapley, Brownlee, and Laundry. There's Brownlee on the left. Stapley's been swallowed up, but it was so close. Was it Brownlee or was it Jackson Laundry from Team Canada?
I'm going to call that Brownlee. He seemed to time that perfectly off Stapley's wheel. Just made that jump. From where I sit, it looked like Brownlee, but wow, what a tight bunch.
Brownlee or Laundry of Team USA, the Canadian. Either Alistair Brownlee or Jackson Laundry, and I think, unconfirmed, 0.05 of a second, Jackson Laundry has done the job on Alistair Brownlee with Max Stapley 0.12 back. There is the team points, 27 for GB, 26 for Australia. They get pipped just. There's, of course, money across on the line for that. So Team GB pick up the goods, and no one else figured anywhere. And Alex G knows that he's delivered it for Team GB. Jackson Laundry from Team USA, Macca, as you say, has hung everyone else out to dry.
He certainly has. Hung them out to dry. Very well-timed sprint. He nailed that perfectly. I thought Brownlee was sitting off that wheel of Max Stapley. I thought he was going to nail it perfectly, seeing the countdown clock with 100 metres out. He was just sitting evenly, but he just left his run a little bit late. And that's great news for Laundry. He's the money's on the line for the individuals at the end across that line, so he's put $500 in his pocket, which is a great race for him. But wow, a very tight event. Compared to last week's event, that was a lot tighter, and those climbs and those sprints at those critical positions made it an Australia and Great Britain affair again.
Yeah, we'll get these unconfirmed reports. I've got the provisional results here. Laundry finished first from Brownlee, was 0.05 of a second back. How good for Jackson Laundry that he pips the Olympic champ by 0.05 of a second. Stapley comes in third. Here's the replay. Laundry on the right, Brownlee on the left, nothing in it. Stapley gets done by 0.1 of a second. Manwaring finishes fourth to add to his first place last time around. But look at that. It almost looks like Brownlee gets it from that angle, but Laundry got it just as they came across the line, three abreast like the end of a there is Ali, who
with his arms up,
not like getting beaten at all. And Manwaring
David
gets
Manwaring.
fourth.
He never
Jeremy
looks
Briand
uncomfortable,
got
David.
fifth,
Looks.
Nathan Killam 6th. Yeah, no, Manwaring
Alex.
just looks like he's warming
Alex.
up. And there's Alex Hughes.
Yeah, Alex.
He finished
That was
8th
great race
overall.
by Alex.
Connemara 9th. Aaron Royal 10th. Pujard 11th. Mark Buckingham finished in 12th. Or Madsen, Marten van Riel, Maximilian Spurl. They're your top 15. Christian Blumenfeld in the end. He didn't stay with him at the end, Bloomy. He ended up 39 seconds back. But 3.9 seconds covered the first 14. And all the way back to, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes in the end. But what a race that was, Macca. Another fantastic chapter, if you like, in the eSports cycling series for Super League Triathlon.
Hey, I'm enjoying the team concept. The jerseys make it a lot easier, seeing the red jerseys of Australia. It's interesting to see Australia in red, but seeing those jerseys bunched together and being able to pick those athletes out and having them talk to each other prior to the race and understanding team tactics makes for a great call. And the Australians and the British are all over it at the moment. There's a lot of work to do for Germany, Norway, for the US and the Canadians to close that gap, because it was really a whitewash of point scoring today by those two teams. So the takeaway for the other teams is we need to group better together. We need to plan where these sprints are going to be and work off each other. It doesn't matter who's scoring those points. They just need to be in your team. And that's what these other teams need to look at going to the next event.
There you go. Confirmed, Jackson Laundry takes the win from Alistair Brownlee and Max Stapley. So after Team GB and Team Australia dominate, we have 3 Canadians in the top 6. Jeremy Briand and Nathan Killam round out the top 6. So Team Canada will jump up in terms of the Team GC. We take the top 2 athletes result from each of the teams to put into our Team GC. So Canada do very well. Team GB pick up the 2 spots from Brownlee and Yee. Team Australia with Manwaring in 4th and Aaron Royal in 10th. James Connemara flying the flag there for Team France, the South African. But there you go, 2.39 seconds covering our top 10. Fantastic race once again. Chris McCormack, thanks very much for getting up early and joining us.
Thank you. I'll see you next week. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We've got 2 more races coming up. Don't forget, you can get involved in them, find out all the information, all the wash up on this one and all the previews for the next one. We'll be doing some interviews over the next few days as well at superleaguetriathlon.com. But right now I'll be popping over to Instagram Live, and I'm doing it because Macca doesn't understand at all how to use Instagram Live. So as a man of the younger generation compared to him, I'll be doing that, speaking to our winners and losers. So pop over there right now. Macca, goodbye to you. Go back to bed. And we'll be heading straight over there right now. So head to Instagram to hear from our winners.